You survived the war, but you don't know why you were spared.
This is not a story about invasion or rescue. It's about what happens when someone broken meets someone who was never supposed to care. He thought the war was finally over when the silence arrived. Not the peaceful kind, but the empty kind that follows after everything loud has already taken what it wanted. He returned to a place that looked familiar enough to call home, yet felt slightly misaligned, as if the world had shifted while he was away and never bothered to move back. People spoke to him normally. Streets functioned as they always had. Life continued with uncomfortable confidence, but inside him, something remained unfinished. The war had stopped outside, but it had not stopped asking questions inside his body. He did not know how to answer them. Sleep came in fragments. Dreams arrived without warning and left without meaning. He was not afraid in them. That was the strangest part. Fear would have made sense. Instead, there was only distance. A sense of standing slightly outside his own life, watching himself move through days without fully participating. He had survived, but survival did not feel like an achievement. It felt like something accidental, something temporary. He did not talk about it. People prefer stories with clear endings, and he did not have one to offer. The first encounter happened by accident, or at least that is how it felt. He noticed the light before he noticed her. A presence that did not belong to any known reflection, any known source. It did not announce itself. It did not demand attention. It simply existed calmly, as if it had always been there and he was the one who had arrived late. When he finally looked directly at her, his first reaction was not fear. It was confusion. She did not resemble the enemies he had imagined during the war. She did not move like a threat. There was no urgency in her posture, no aggression in her eyes. If anything, she looked curious, as if she were observing something fragile and unfamiliar. She spoke without raising her voice. Her words were not commands. They were questions. Simple ones, direct ones. Questions no one had asked him since the war ended. How does it feel to be back? Do you still hear the noise when it stops? He did not know how to respond at first. Not because he did not understand her, but because he was not used to being asked things that mattered. People had asked if he was okay. They had asked if he needed anything. But no one had asked how the silence felt. No one had asked what stayed behind after survival. Their meetings became regular without ever being planned. She appeared when he expected no one and left before he could ask her to stay. There was no promise in her presence, only consistency. She did not touch him. She did not comfort him. She listened. And somehow that felt more intimate than anything he had experienced before. He found himself speaking without rehearsing his thoughts, without filtering them into acceptable shapes. He told her about the moments that returned without warning, about the guilt of being alive, about the strange emptiness that followed relief. She did not interrupt. She did not correct him. She absorbed every word as if it carried weight. Over time, he began to notice the difference between her and everyone else. Humans wanted him to move on, to recover, to rebuild. She did not want anything from him. She observed him the way one observes something rare, not because it was valuable, but because it was vulnerable. That unsettled him more than hostility ever could. Being seen without being judged created a quiet tension he could not name. It felt warm but unfamiliar, safe but unstable, as if comfort itself had become something dangerous. The truth revealed itself slowly. She was not there by coincidence. His survival had drawn attention, not because it was heroic, but because it was statistically improbable. His continued existence disrupted a balance he did not understand. To her kind, survival was data. Adaptation was curiosity. Emotion was an anomaly. He was not special to them in the way stories usually describe. He was interesting. An interest, he learned, could be just as dangerous. When she finally told him what his presence meant, she did not do it with menace. She did it with honesty. His continued existence could not remain unnoticed. Others would come. Rules would apply. Choices would be demanded. She did not say what those choices were. She did not need to. The weight of them filled the space between them without explanation. For the first time since the war ended, he felt something close to fear, not of death, of being taken apart, of being reduced to something he could not recognize. And yet when she looked at him, there was something else there, not pity, not desire, something quieter, something unresolved. As if she too had crossed a line she could not uncross. She had observed him long enough to see him as more than a variable, more than a subject. And now that awareness carried its own consequences. Neither of them said what they both understood, that whatever came next would change them in ways neither side had prepared for. The war had ended, but this was not peace. This was something more uncertain, something warmer, something far more dangerous than violence, because violence ends, but being seen does not. And once someone truly sees you, there is no After that night, nothing felt accidental anymore. Their meetings continued, but the atmosphere around them changed. The warmth that once felt unexpected now carried weight. Every moment together felt borrowed, as if time itself was watching them closely. He noticed how carefully she listened, how her presence lingered a second longer than before, how silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt intentional, like something they were both choosing not to name, because naming it would force decisions neither of them were ready to make. He began to understand that her kind did not experience attachment the way humans did. Curiosity came first, observation followed. Connection was not supposed to exist, and yet there it was, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just present. She asked fewer questions now, but when she did, they cut deeper. She wanted to know what made him stay awake at night when nothing was happening. What part of him felt most fragile when he stopped pretending to be fine? He answered without thinking. Not because he trusted her completely, but because something in him no longer wanted to hide. The closer they became, the more the world around them seemed to tighten. He noticed changes he could not explain, systems adjusting, patterns repeating, subtle signs that his existence was no longer invisible. She noticed them too. He could see it in the way her posture changed, the way her voice softened when certain subjects came up, the way she avoided answering questions that had no simple explanations. When he finally asked her what would happen next, she did not respond immediately. That silence told him more than words ever could. When she did speak, her honesty felt heavier than any threat. His presence had triggered interest beyond her control. Others were aware now, not because he had done anything remarkable, but because he had endured. Survival to them was not emotional, it was disruptive. An irregularity that demanded attention. She explained it calmly, without drama, without fear. That was what unsettled him the most. To her world, this was not a crisis. It was procedure, and he was part of it whether he agreed or not. He asked if he was in danger. She did not answer directly. Danger implied intent. This was different. This was inevitability. She told him that once something is observed long enough, it cannot be unseen. Once a pattern is noticed, it must be understood. Once a being is acknowledged, it must be classified. Her voice did not shake when she said it, but her eyes did. And that small contradiction mattered more than anything else she had shared. He realized then that whatever existed between them had already crossed a line. Not a physical one, but something quieter and more permanent. She had begun to see him as more than data, and he had begun to rely on her presence in ways he could not justify. That mutual awareness created a fragile space neither of them knew how to protect. He understood that if others intervened, she would be forced to choose. And if she chose him, the cost would not be symbolic, it would be real. For the first time since the war ended, he felt a different kind of fear. Not the sharp fear of survival, but the slow fear of loss. Loss of connection. Loss of being understood without explanation. Loss of someone who saw him not as broken, not as heroic, but simply as human. That fear did not make him want to run. It made him want to stay. And that realization frightened him more than anything else he had faced. When she finally told him she could no longer appear as freely as before, she did not ask him to understand. She did not ask for forgiveness. She simply stated it as a fact. Their time had been noticed. Their interactions had been measured. The space they shared was no longer private. He asked if this meant goodbye. She did not say yes. She did not say no. Instead, she told him something that stayed with him long after she was gone. Some connections are not meant to continue openly. Some exist only to change those involved. After she left, the silence returned. But it was not the same silence he had known after the war. This one was heavier but warmer. It carried memory, awareness, choice. He understood now that peace was not the absence of conflict. It was the presence of something worth risking. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if he would see her again.